so that you can't see it. Okay.
Hey guys, we just went for a run, so let's start the story now. My girlfriend's gonna read. I'm gonna do like hand motions, like for what they're doing.
Okay. This is called A Dark Night in the Garden. The wind was picking up now, blowing clouds across the moon, shrouding the garden in darkness. "Stay up with me," Jesus asked his friends. They said yes and waited under the olive trees, but they were tired and they soon fell asleep. Jesus walked ahead alone in the dark. He needed to talk to his heavenly Father. He knew it was time for him to die. They had planned it long ago, he and his Father. Jesus was going to take the punishment for all the wrong things anybody had ever done or ever would do. "Papa! Father!" Jesus cried, and he fell to the ground. Is there any other way to get your children back, to heal their hearts, to get rid of the poison? But Jesus knew there was no other way. All the poison of sin was going to have to go into his own heart. God was going to pour into Jesus' heart all the sadness and brokenness in people's hearts. He was going to pour into Jesus' body all the sickness in people's bodies. God was going to have to blame his Son for everything that had gone wrong, and it would crush Jesus. But there was something else even more horrible. When people ran away from God, they lost God. It was what happened when they ran away. Not being close to God was like a punishment, and Jesus was going to take the punishment. Jesus knew what that meant. He was going to lose his Father, and that, Jesus knew, would break his heart in two. Violent sobs as Jesus was crying shook his whole body. Then Jesus was quiet, like a lamb. "I trust you, Papa," he said. "Whatever you say, I will do." Suddenly, through the trees, a glitter of starlight flashed off steel. In the quiet garden came whispers, muffled voices, clanking metal, and the sound of boots marching. Jesus stood up. He woke his friends. "Now is the time," he said. "Everything that was written about me, what God has been telling his people all through the long years, it's all coming true." And into the night, with burning torches and lanterns and swords and clubs and armor, they came, an army of soldiers. Judas led them straight to Jesus so they could arrest him, and Jesus was waiting for them. See, everybody? That's in the garden. Are you going to keep doing the motions? Mm-hmm. Okay. Peter leapt up, took a sword, and tried to defend Jesus. He sliced off the guard's ear. Jesus immediately touched the guard and healed him. Peter said, he said, "This is not the way." Peter didn't realize that no army, no matter how big, could ever arrest Jesus. Not unless Jesus let them. Then Jesus, who had never done anything except love people, was arrested, as if he were a criminal. Jesus' friends were afraid, so they ran away and hid in the dark shadows. So Peter is going to cut off the guard's ear. His name was Malchus.
Wait,
that guy. Well, no, they don't show it because it'd be too gross. The guards marched Jesus off, and they took him to the leaders.
I can't see the ear.
Okay. The leaders put Jesus on trial. "Are you the Son of God?" they asked. "I am," Jesus said. "Who do you think you are, to call yourself God? You must die for calling yourself the Son of God." Only the Romans are allowed to kill prisoners, so the leaders made a plan. "We'll tell the Romans, this man wants to be our king, and then they will crucify him." But it would be all right. It was God's plan. "It was for this reason I was born into the world," Jesus said. There he is, being brought for his trial.
I can do letters.
Okay.
Can I spell?
"So, you're a king, are you?" the Roman soldiers jeered. "Then you'll need a crown and a robe." They gave Jesus a crown made out of thorns and put a purple robe on him. pretended to bow down to him. "Your Majesty," they said. Then they whipped him and spat on him. They didn't understand that this was the Prince of Life, the King of heaven and earth, who had come to rescue them. The soldiers made him a sign that said, "Our King," nailed it to a wooden cross. They walked up a hill outside the city. Jesus carried the cross on his back. Jesus had never done anything wrong, but they're going to kill him the way criminals were killed. They nailed Jesus to the cross. "Father, forgive them," Jesus gasped. "They don't understand what they're doing." "You say you've come to rescue us," people shouted at him. "But you can't even rescue yourself." But they were wrong. Jesus could have rescued himself. A legion of angels would have flown to his side if he'd called. "If you were only the Son of God, you could just climb off that cross," they said. And of course they were right. Jesus could have just climbed down. Actually, he could have just said a word and made it all stop. Like when he healed that little girl, and when he stilled the storm, and when he fed 5,000 people. But Jesus stayed. You see, they didn't understand. It wasn't the nails that kept Jesus there. It was love. "Papa," Jesus cried, frantically searching the sky. "Papa, where are you? Don't leave me." And for the first time, and the last, when he spoke, nothing happened. Just a horrible, endless silence. God didn't answer. He turned from his boy, and tears rolled down Jesus' face, the face of one who would wipe away every tear from every eye. Even though it was midday, a dreadful darkness covered the face of the earth. The sun could not shine. The earth trembled and quaked. The great mountains shook. Rocks split in two until it seemed that the whole world would break. That creation itself would tear apart. The full force of the storm of God's fierce anger at sin was coming down on his own son instead of his people. It was the only way that God could destroy sin and not destroy his children whose hearts were filled with sin. Then Jesus shouted out in a loud voice, "It is finished!" And it was. He had done it. Jesus had rescued the whole world. "Father," Jesus cried, "I give you my life." And with a great sigh, he let himself die. And strange clouds and shadows filled the sky, purple, orange, black, like a...
I love purple. That's my favorite color, guys, if you didn't know that.
All right, but it was like a bruise.
What?
Jesus' friends gently carried him. They laid Jesus in a new tomb. It's like a cave, carved out of rock. How could Jesus die? What had gone wrong? What did it mean? They didn't know anything anymore. Except they did know their hearts were breaking. "That's the end of Jesus," the leader said. But just to be sure, they sent strong soldiers to guard the tomb. They hauled a huge stone in front of the door of the tomb so that no one could get in. See that? No one could get in